What's up, guys? Keyshawn here, back at you with another new alternate universe video. This will be part one of What If Naruto Was a Tenno from Warframe. Now, I know what you're thinking. What is a Tenno? What is Warframe? And Keyshawn, what the hell are you going to be making? Well, I'm going to start telling you, and I hope you enjoy this. Now, this will pretty much be about Warframe. It's pretty much a well-known game, kinda not, but it's a well-known platform game based on PlayStation 4, PC. It's a game about cybernetic robot ninjas, and the story is pretty big, but at the same time, if you're a Warframe player like me, you'll pretty much understand what is a Warframe and what is a Tenno. But pretty much, I'll explain in more details later, but let's get to it. So how we start this off? We start off with Minato. Now, Minato is pretty much is a Tenno. Now, a Tenno is like these bunch of kids, you could say bunch of kids, that got stuck on a ship and an accident happened, giving them supernatural abilities, but making them stuck as young. But I know how y'all guys are going to say, but Keyshawn and Chia, how's that going to happen? How would Minato ever have a kid if he's stuck in a kid's body? Listen, the story is going to still be continued. I'm going to tell you how it's going to work, my guy. But let's continue. Pretty much, this is how Minato is pretty much was stuck on the ship with all the Tenno kids, and pretty much they got, you could say, given ability and energy and power, unique powers. Well, void power, you could say. Now, this is where the whole Oricon pretty much was about to execute them until a woman sacrificed herself, which a certain unknown woman sacrificed herself, which to keep all of them alive. Now, these Tennos, which Minato is part of them, was pretty much used as a weaponized and also to be linked with Warframes. So Minato had his own Warframe, but he also had his own unique Warframe, which some Tennos do to give it to their high rank, which Minato was pretty much a commander of one of those Tennos, which he had his own unique Warframe and his own unique abilities and stuff. But this is where, sadly, the chaos broke, and pretty much the Oricon was getting killed by the Tennos. This is where Minato was given a task to kill these two Oricons, or these three Oricons, to pretty much to end the day in the entirety of the golden age of the Oricon. This is where Minato thought of something different, and pretty much says no, and takes the three Oricons with him, and pretty much goes to a different dimension, which the Oricon pretty much made the technology to hop on different dimensions, and pretty much took those three Oricon and disappeared. Now, this is how we're going to switch to the Naruto universe now. This is where Minato has the Oricon ship, or you could say the Void ship. We're gonna say Oricon ship, and the three Oricons are pretty much looking at Minato and ask him what he's gonna do next. Is he gonna kill them? What's he gonna do? Which this is where Minato looks at them and says, "Oh, I'm not gonna kill you." Which they're pretty much confused and says, "Then what? What do you expect us to do?" Which Minato says, "Y'all can do what y'all want. I pretty much just got you out of there because y'all showed me kindness when the other Oricons didn't." And pretty much Minato is different than the Tennos. He's a unique Tenno as he can age, while other Tennos can't age. So, yeah, he's pretty much in an adult body, while other Tennos can't age. So, yeah. So, this is a Tenno. It's the person right there. They're pretty much stuck in the kid's body, but Minato is different because, like I said, he's built different. So, he's not going to be stuck in the kid's body. But, let's continue. Pretty much this is where Minato says that he's going to pretty much go on Earth and see what they got over there. And pretty much heads there and tells the Oricons they can do what they want. If they want to conquer your planet, they can. He doesn't really care. He just kept his promise to a certain someone and pretty much gets out of there. But the Oricon has spare Warframes and stuff. Like Excalibur, Mag, Loki, they have spare Warframes on that ship. So, but the Warframes is pretty much non-operational unless they have a Tenno. And Minato is the only Tenno who can pretty much operate a Warframe, operate all those Warframes because they're not sentient, but they are at the same time. But I pretty much explain along the way. This is where Minato heads to Earth, and he's in his teenager, you could say his teenager state, not into his adult state. So he's not aging all the way up yet, but he's in his teenage state, and this is where he looks around the village and stuff. And this is where one of the villagers, this is where he looks around and he sees pretty much a guy who's pretty much drunk and stuff. And well, we're just gonna say he finds a dead teenager, and he pretty much takes that teenager clothes and wears it, and hides his tire in a bag that the kid apparently has, and begins to start walking around, looking around. One of the this is where he sees the academy, and he starts to go in there, and pretty much he registers himself in there because I'm gonna say this is the time where any person can register to become a ninja, but they have to stay at the leaf, which Minato got nowhere else to go, so he's gonna stay at the leaf. Now, we're just gonna do it a couple of times, and everything happens the same. Minato meets Kushina, but a little bit later, and pretty much has a kid and all that. Now, let's get to the juicy part, the Nine Tails attack. Now, Minato doesn't have chakra, but he has a different power. He has a different component, and it's energy. Now, what is energy? Now, pretty much energy is pretty much where you can get energy, and to, like, it's like these orbs where you can get energy to use abilities, or just to use the void energy, which Minato has. But I'm going to make it a little bit different because this is not really a video game. It's pretty much a what if anime, but combined with a video game, you could say. Now, Minato will have like a regeneration, so his energy will regenerate, not into a, well, it will regenerate into a fast pace, but not into like fast. So it's not like, oh, God tier fast, but it's fast. Pretty much, this is where we start with the whole Masked Man and Minato fight. Minato is pretty much fighting the Masked Man, and the Masked Man is pretty much trying to grab Minato and teleport him. This is where Minato is pretty much backing up, teleporting left and right, which Minato is not losing energy very quickly, but he's trying not to waste time because the Nine Tails attack is pretty much attacking the village, and he doesn't want the Nine Tails to pretty much wipe out the whole village and kill a lot of people. This is where Minato thinks of an idea and pretty much says, I never thought I had to do this, but I might have to bring out my Warframe. And this is where he calls out his Warframe, Oni Thunder God, or should I say Thunder Oni, as it's pretty much the Thunder God or Thunder Demon. And this is where his Warframe comes out. And this is where Obito is confused and saying, what the hell is that? And begins to try to, and pretty much confused, he's pretty much standing still trying to figure out who should he goes out first. Should he go after him or should he go after this thing? This is where he says he has no time, and he begins to start charging at the Oni, the Warframe. This is where his mistake truly comes to his reckoning, as he's going to try to attack the Warframe. This is where the Warframe activates one of his abilities, Thunder Shock or Shock Absorb. As Minato's trying to touch the Warframe, this is where it gets shocked. Well, a dangerous shock, electricity, and it gets shocked for 5 seconds. This is where Obito gets shit flying to a tree. It pretty much hits his back, and his arm begins to start slowly falling off because the regeneration. And he begins to say, "Damn it, what happened?" And this is where Minato is about to finish him off until Obito teleports away and gets the fuck out of there because he doesn't want to get part of that ass clap. Now, this is where Minato thinks of a plan and realizes that he knows he's not going to die, but he has to do it. And pretty much he will come back later on to see his son and his wife. This is where he starts. This is where he starts charging, and uses the Reaper Death Serum. Now, of course, this is where his Warframe helps him out and pretty much holds Kurama still, shocking Kurama pretty much at 1,000 kilovolts, not 1,000, 1,000,000 kilovolts, and pretty much is shocking Kurama, which Kurama is paralyzed and can't do anything. And this is where Minato uses the Reaper Death Serum, pretty much having But the Reaper Duster is a little bit different, as it's not going to take his soul, but it's going to take his life. Now, this is where he pretty much uses the Reaper Death Seal, and it pretty much seals half of the Nine Tails in Naruto, which Naruto would get the good Nine Tails because we regularly don't give Naruto the good Nine Tails in all my what ifs, and Kushina's going to get the bad side of the Nine Tails. And pretty much Minato begins to hit to the ground and begins to start fading away. Now, this is where Kushina begins to start crawling with Naruto in her hand and starts getting to Minato and crying, saying, Minato, no, you can't die. Which Minato looks and says, I'll be back. Don't worry. And he pretty much fades away. Which he's not dead, guys, keep in mind. He's just in the void, healing up. And it's going to take a very long time for him to come back. But this is where Kushina thinks he's dead. And pretty much this is where Kushina begins to start crying, holding on to Naruto. And Naruto's hair is a little bit different, as Minato dyed his hair yellow, but his true hair color is black. So he's not an Uchiha or anything. He just has black hair because it's due to the ship accident of the Void, because he wanted to hide his true identity. But pretty much, this is where Minato dies off, and Kushina is holding Naruto. Now, we're going to continue the story. This is where, as Kushina's in the hospital holding Naruto, this is where Danzo and Hiruzen is pretty much looking at Kushina and saying, "This is a whole disaster. Surely you know the village is going to attack both of them." Which, this is where Danzo says that, and Hiruzen says, "I know." Which, this is where Danzo says, "I can take him in." Which Hiruzen looks at Danzo with a serious look and a death stare, saying, "You're not going to be taking them in. Which I'm going to be watching over them, making sure they're protected." Which, this is where Danzo makes a grin, but he says whatever, and goes on. Now, this is where we're going to do a time skip, and we're going to start with a 5-year-old Naruto. Now, we're going to start with the start of it. This is where we have a Naruto who's not really a delinquent or anything of a prankster, but more different. He's, as you could say, intelligent in his own sense, as he doesn't have chakra, but he has his own sense, his own differences of power. I basically explain, but pretty much this 10-year-old Naruto is pretty much doing work and practicing his chakra, which he realized that he can't activate his chakra, or he can't do anything, which he doesn't know how to do it. And he realized that he's chakraless, but that still doesn't stop him from motivating to get stronger and stuff, and become Hokage. Now, this is where Naruto goes to the academy and begins to have a sparring match with Sasuke. Now, of course, as it is canon, Sasuke whoops Naruto's ass. And pretty much Naruto gets up, which all the girls are cheering on Sasuke, including the other kids, saying, "Yeah, you beat that Nine Tails brat." Which Naruto pretty much gets up and begins to start walking home. Now, this is where he walks home, and he pretty much sees his mom, Kushina, which she pretty much says, "Welcome home, sweetie," which pretty much Naruto doesn't say anything, and begins to start heading in the house. This is where Kushina sees all the bruises on him and asks, did he get beat up again? And does she need to teach him a lesson? Which Naruto says, "No, Mom, it's okay. I was just doing a sparring and I accidentally got hurt. A little bit extra." Which she pretty much looks at a look of concern, but she says okay. This is where Naruto heads in his room, and he begins to go in his room and begins to start crying. And he begins to be frustrated and saying, "How come I don't have chakra? How come I'm putting all this effort into nothing that I can't do anything?" And this is where he begins to start looking at his father's weapon, the flying Raijin weapon, which he begins to say, "Father," which he begins to touch the weapon. But this weapon was actually a device that teleported Minato to the Oricon ship, just in case if he needed anything, or he just needed to leave the planet, just in case when those sentients come. Because sentients, keep in mind, I'm just going to say this, sentients also have the ability to travel into other dimensions too. Because sentients want all Tennos dead in Warframes. So they can rule the world, rule the whole universe, including the dimensions. We're just going to say that. But pretty much this is where Naruto touches the thing and he activates it because since he's, you could say Minotaur's son gets teleported on the Oricon ship. Now this is where Naruto looks around and he begins to say, where am I? Which he's pretty much scared. This is where the Oricon, the three Oricons, two is a female, well, three is a female. I'm just gonna say three Oricon as a female. And they look at Naruto. And they begins to look at him and says, so you must be his son, Minato. Which pretty much Naruto looks at one of them and says, you know my father? Tell me about my father. Where is he? And is he really dead? Which pretty much the Oricon is not saying anything, but pretty much looking at him and realize that he has a tons of questions. This is where one of the Oricons say, I'm surprised that Minato had to die like that. Why he didn't tell Kushina all the secrets? So Naruto, so this kid has to not be left out of his true purpose and what he can truly do. Which the other Oricons is pretty much looking at nodding. Which the other one says, Naruto Uzumaki, we have think of thought and we have considered you as a chosen warrior. And also you should understand your true legacy. Which this is where one of the Oricons picks up Naruto, which Naruto gets lifted up by one of the Oricons with, you could say, gravity ability. And they begin to touch Naruto's head, all three of them. Which this is where Naruto gets all the knowledge of what he can do with his abilities and what he can pretty much, they basically teach them instantly without really having the effort to teach him. And he pretty much wakes up in his room, which one of the Oricons before they send him back saying that they will meet him again when the time is needed to teach him something else. And they pretty much gives him a Warframe. Now, what is the Warframe they give him? Mag. Mag Prime, that will be later on. But they give him Mag, just to start him off with. This is where Naruto wakes up, and he begins to sweat and say, man, that was a weird dream. Now, as he's looking around, this is where he sees the Warframe. And he begins to freak out, saying, what the hell is that thing? Now, as he does scream, this is where Kushina begins to ask if Naruto's okay. Which Naruto starts laughing, saying, yeah, he just stubbed his toe on the bed, which he says will be careful next time. And he pretty much says he will. Now, this is where Naruto pretty much goes in. Well, not goes in. Pretty much walks to the Warframe and looks at the Warframe. And he begins to look at, he says, so you're a mag. Which, this is where he pretty much says, how do I know this name? But he pretty much says, he doesn't think of that much. And he pretty much looks more at the Warframe. And this is where he looks at his hand. And the Warframe begins to look at its own hand. And it begins to start looking at Naruto, and Naruto looks at it. He says, so that means we're connected. Which, I'm going to say the Warframe is a little bit sentient, and it says a little whisper of, yes, we are. Which Naruto is a little bit freaked out, but he pretty much is deciding to say, heck yeah, this is awesome. And pretty much saying, so what can I do? Can I command you to do anything? Which it doesn't say anything to him that much, but he says, I guess we can work on talking later on. Now the next day, this is where Naruto started walking to school. And of course this is where the Warframe is walking beside Naruto. Or you could say not walking beside him, but pretty much is pretty much in the room while he's just walking to school. This is where he's pretty much feels the power coursing through him. And he's pretty much saying, I wonder what ability he has. And he's thinking of that while he's walking to the school. Now, as he's walking to school, this is where he sits down and pretty much is studying. Well, pretty much sits down by Sasuke. But Sasuke is the top of his class due with because well no, Naruto is the top of his class with his highest perceived of intelligence and knowing everything. But since he doesn't have chakra, he's kinda second because of that. While Sasuke is first because he has chakra and but not intelligence. So yeah, it's kinda like that. So Naruto's first intelligence with geniusness, while Sasuke's first with the chakra. So it's kinda like that. But pretty much, this is where we're gonna get to the whole training thing. Now, this is where Sasuke and Naruto is fighting again, and this is where the teacher says, "Everybody get your positions," and he says, "Fight." Now, this is where Sasuke and Naruto started fighting, and Naruto is getting the upper hand with Sasuke because Naruto has been training with his physical technique with taijutsu, but he doesn't have chakra. But this is where Sasuke gets the upper hand because this is where Sasuke has chakra and he's pretty much putting a little bit more chakra in his fist and pretty much is damaging Naruto. This is where Naruto gets kicked back and this is where Sasuke shoots a fireball at Naruto. Of course, this is where Naruto begins to brace himself for the attack, but this is where he does the transference and he transfer inside of his Warframe. Or you could say transfer kinda you could say inside his Warframe, but not at the same time. It's a little bit weird, but I'll tell you the transfers. Well, pretty much his Warframe appears in front of. Well, he transferred a part of his War inside of him. So, yeah, he's pretty much a part of his Warframe, but not. It's confusing, but he's basically inside the Warframe, but not at the same time. You could say. But this is where he pretty much. The Warframe appears out of nowhere and blocks the attack with and takes shield damage. A little bit of shield damage, not a lot, like 50%. And every kid is confused and looking at the Warframe and including the teacher saying, "What the hell is that thing?" Including Sasuke too. Which this is where the Warframe is a blocked attack and pretty much Naruto is looking at the Warframe and says, "Wait, this is the Warframe I had." And he's pretty much saying, "Am I the Warframe?" Which this is where Sasuke begins to say whatever, and he begins to do another technique saying, "I knew you was weird, but not this weird," and begins to shoot like a couple more fireballs, thinking that it's a puppet. It's a puppet, which it's not a puppet whatsoever. This is where Naruto accidentally activates one of the abilities, which magnetism, which pretty much magnetism is an ability where you can make a magnum bubble, like a magnet bubble. So imagine like someone shooting bullets at you, but that, but you're not a magnet, and you put like a magnet on someone else. Like imagine like a magnet, and someone is holding it, and if you shoot a bullet at that magnet, it goes to that thing, to only specific that thing. So whoever attacks or shoot anything at you, it will only go to that magnet. So yeah, that's what it basically is. So this is where Naruto sh- activate the ability on accident and pretty much activates it on Sasuke. Now this is where the fireball shoots out but begins to go back around and ricochets and hits him and pretty much sends the fireball flying at Sasuke. This is where Sasuke gets hit and pretty much passes out. Now this is where Naruto untransfers and pretty much comes out the suit, and he starts to get used to it and begins to be a little bit more freaked out and begins to run home, while the Warframe is pretty much just standing there, while the ninja is confused of why the Warframe is standing there too. But this is where the Warframe begins to start be a sentient and just gets out of there. Excuse me. I'm sorry, I'm back, guys. Sorry if y'all hear loud background. My name is talking loud. I'm sorry if y'all hear that. Black household. But pretty much, let's continue. Pretty much, this is where the Warframe gets out of there and Naruto runs home. Now, later that evening, this is where Naruto starts testing out the Warframe and see what he can do with the Warframe and stuff. And as he's trying to test it out, this is where he's a little bit more frustrated. This is where one of the Orikins is observing him and pretty much starts smiling, saying, he's actually trying to understand his warframe. Maybe we should give him a little bit more help out, don't you think? Which the other two Orikins looks and they begins to smile and says, we might as well. We should probably make him get prepared. As if he doesn't get prepared, those sentients will come and he will die. And also this village too. Which this is where the pretty much they teleport Naruto back on the Oricon ship. Now, this is where Naruto is confused of how he got up here, and the Oricons begin to say, "We changed our mind. We're going to teach you a little bit more earlier." Which Naruto says, "So you're going to teach me how to use use this Warframe and also how to use jutsus and stuff?" Which the Oricon says, "Your father always had a weird way of using the jutsus without using real chakra, but in his own energy. So we shall teach you it." Which Naruto has decided, it pretty much saying that he's thinking himself, finally, I can become strong. Now, this is where the Oricon pretty much shows him where the you could say nesting thing, where he can awaken his power more clear and understand. Now, this is where Naruto hops on the thing and he begins to get into the thing and sleeps. Now, as he's sleeping, this is where he sees another figure, and it's him. But this figure is much dark, kind of has a dark void, and it smiles at him and says, "Hey, kiddo," which pretty much Naruto is a little bit weirded out, but he asks, "Who are you?" This is where it doesn't say nothing much, but pretty much says, "Hmm, all I can say this, you're nothing without me, so you need me, and I need you," kind of way. Which pretty much it taps Naruto's forehead, and Naruto wakes back up. But he wakes up on a different ship. Now, this is where, as he's waking up a ship and he's looking around, he realizes that he's pretty much connected to a thing. Well, pretty much he's connected to a thing, and he begins to hop out of it. Now, as he's looking around the ship, this is where he sees each different cattle things and stuff. And he begins to look out and realize that he's out of space. Well, he sees stars and stuff and planets, and he begins to say, "What the hell am I? Where am I?" Which pretty much one of the Oricans is pretty much radioing on the ship, pretty much explaining to him that this is his own ship or his own room, you could say, or his headquarters place. Which Naruto looks around and says, "Whoa, this is awesome. What is this? And also what is?" Which this is where one of the Oricans say, "Please calm your containment. We will tell you more about this." And Naruto begins to learn more. Now, they begin to explain to Naruto that pretty much he can do multiple abilities, as he can do transfers, as he can control the Warframe, or he can pretty much hop out the Warframe and do his own thing, and he can shoot a laser beam blast, and he can basically do a lot more. But this is where they tell him that he has a force energy or a void energy, where he can pretty much tap in. There's many different kinds, like which there's one that can make you invisible and gives you energy back, which I'm gonna give Naruto that because it's gonna kind of work together with Kurama. But yeah, it's gonna work together with Kurama more efficiency, but we're gonna make it more cooler. Now I know what y'all guys thinking. How would it work if Naruto has energy instead of chakra? I'm gonna tell y'all that. I'm gonna tell y'all that later on. But let's continue. Pretty much this is where Naruto learns what he can do, and he can pretty much craft stuff, craft weapons, unique weapons, powerful weapons and stuff, and also can craft warframes and stuff, and unique warframes, including primes and stuff, as they teach him what he can do. But they pretty much tells him that all in time that he's gonna have to get materials and also strengthen himself and pretty much have a better connection with his warframe. Which this is where Naruto agrees on that. Well, pretty much understands and begins to say, well, how does he go back home? And this is where pretty much the Orkin tells him that there's a Pacific teleporter, um, where he can hop on, but really he can just be at two places at one time. So he can be on the ship, and also he can be at home. So, and they pretty much teach him how he can teleport or transfer into Earth and or transfer back on the ship, which Naruto understands and pretty much begins to practice and pretty much transfer back on Earth. Now, this is where he ends up in his room and says, it's a little bit weird, but he understands and pretty much smiles. Now, this is where we're going to continue the next day. Then the next day, this is where Naruto is pretty much going, and this is where he does the Shadow Clone test. Now, since they taught him how he can use his energy to do Shadow Clones, this Shadow Clone will be much more stronger, as it's not going to be like a clone based on chakra, because chakra is a little bit different. So the clone will be much more stronger, as much more stronger than the original Shadow Clone. So when Naruto does it, this is where the Shadow Clone comes out much more faster, and they're instantly impressed and pass Naruto. And saying, huh, look like you do have chakra, which one of them says that, which Naruto doesn't mind it, and pretty much smiles and says, believe it, I'm going to become Hokage, which the other teachers smile and says, and start laughing, saying, alright. And they pretty much just say, have a nice day, Naruto. Now, this is where Naruto is pretty much going home in Smite, and pretty much he goes to say he's going to go eat ramen first, and pretty much goes to eat ramen first. Now, later on that night, as he's about to go home, this is where he pretty much sees a kid with a scroll, and he follows the kid. Now, as he follows the kid in the forest, he pretty much jumps down and asks, what's the kid doing? And the kid is pretty much freaked out and doesn't want to get in trouble and explains the whole situation. This is where Naruto realized that Mitsuki is is a pretty much is a traitor, and he begins to tell the kid that he won't get in trouble. But how about they both learn something from the scroll, and he can learn what he can do on the Shadow Clone while he learns some other stuff, and he won't tell. Which the kid agrees, and they begin to start learning jutsus from each other, learning jutsu from the scroll. Now Naruto begins to learn many many jutsus, but he begins to write down some of them and put them in his pocket, while the kid learns the Shadow Clone and pretty much is saying that he learns it, which Naruto is excited for him and saying good job, while the kid's saying thanks, and the kid asks what did he learn, which Naruto does a little smile. It pretty much shows the kid um shows the kid a Rasengan, which the kid is impressed, and Naruto says, but don't tell no one, and they pretty much both keep it quiet. Now, this is where Naruto tells the kid to return the scroll back while he go handle Mitsuki, which the kid agrees and starts running back. And he told him to go tell one of the teachers that Mitsuki is a traitor, and he's pretty much going to deal with the traitor by himself. Now, this is where the kid is running, and this is where Naruto is waiting at the forest, and this is where Mitsuki begins to show up and says, and realize that Naruto is there. Now, Naruto is pretty much laying on the tree and saying, "Oh, hey, traitor." Which pretty much Mitsuki is saying, "What do you mean, Naruto? What are you talking about? I just came to find the kid who had the scroll because I knew about it." Which Naruto says, say your lies for later." Which this is where Mitsuki begins to take out a big shuriken and throws it at Naruto, which Naruto pretty much does the transfer it, and begins to grab grab the shuriken and throw it back at Mitsuki with 10 times more force, which Mitsuki just barely dodged and gets a cut on his cheek. Now, as that happened, he's pretty much saying, "What? How did he do that?" Which pretty much he realized that he's seeing a thing, which he says, "Is this a puppet?" And Mitsuki is saying, which Mitsuki is confused and trying to figure out what the hell is that thing that he's pretty much fighting up against. This is where Naruto pretty much uses Mag and begins to fight Mitsuki. But this is where he thinks of what if he merged jutsus with the Warframe. And this is where he does the hand seals with Mag and pretty much create a bunch of Mags. Now, this is where the crazy part comes in. This is where Naruto does does the punching. Now, this is one of the abilities that Mag has. Now, punching is pretty much his ability as it destroys the enemy's armor, but also hurts them in the process. So it's kind of as like it destroys their armor, but also it kills some enemies. Depends on how much armor you have. So the more armor you have, the more shit, the more deep shit you're in, and the less armor you have, eh, and the less if you don't have armor, you're still in shit. I mean, you're kind of not in shit, but if you have armor, you're in deep shit, and you're gonna pretty much die. This is where all three of the mags, four of them, activate the ability and pretty much creates a big shockwave. But not as to hurt anyone else, but pretty much to hurt Miski. And as it goes as a wave, it pretty much Miski begins to start instantly coughing up blood. And he's like, "Cut!" And he pretty much hits the ground and pretty much is knocked. Not dead. He's barely breathing, but he's not. This is where Naruto pretty much transfer out the Warframe and pretty much says, "Huh, so I can do it. Amazing." This is where Ruka comes in and looks at the situation, and he pretty much looks at Miski, and Miski is pretty much down, covered in blood, which he looks at Miski, but Miski is still not dead, but not. Which Aruka looks at Naruto and asks if he did this, which Naruto says yeah, he stopped him, and Naruto explained the whole situation, which this is where Aruka is smiling, saying, I'm quite amazed, Naruto. You actually handled him off by yourself. And he pretty much gives Naruto his headband. Now, this is where Naruto is excited, saying that he passed, and Miski and Aruka is pretty much smiling, saying, wow, amazing. Now, this is where Hiruzen is looking through his glass ball, and pretty much saying, interesting. I might want to learn more about that thing he's using. It's not a puppet, but what is it? Which he's saying is inside of his head. Later on that night, this is where Naruto heads back home, which his mom is pretty much on the couch sleeping. But as he's about to give his mom a kiss, he realized that his mom is holding a picture of her and Minato, and she pretty much is upset that she's pretty much crying in her sleep because she's pretty much dreaming about Minato and her and Naruto all being together as a happy family. And she's pretty much saying Minato, which Naruto gives her a kiss on the head and pretty much goes in his room. Now, as he goes into his room, this is where he does the transfers and hop on the ship. And this is where his, I would say his robot thing, and I'm going to say it's Ordis, and Ordis is pretty much saying, Operator, are you ready for a operation? It's time to get killing. And then Naruto looks at Jordis, and Jordis pretty much says, sorry about that. Let's get going. Which Naruto smiles and says, yeah, let's get going. Now, this is part 1 of What If Naruto Was a Tenno. If you like, leave a like, do all that stuff. Let's just get this up to 50 likes, and I'll make a part 2. But I'm Keyshawn Chia. Thanks for watching, and peace out.
It looks like you lost another one.